Welcome to another episode of Message from Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers in law aren't necessarily monsters in law. We have a great topic today, ladies. We're going to talk about a very iconic person that has really been in the news since 1982. But before we get into the episode, I'm going to introduce my lovely co host, who happen to be my daughters in law. And to the left of me is Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm married to Beth's oldest son, Alex.
And to the right of me is Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I'm married to Beth's middle son, Andrew.
So, yes, we're going to be talking about Martha Stewart today because she has been in the news, as I said, since 1982. But recently, Netflix produced a documentary on her, and so we're gonna talk about that. But before we get into the episode, we're gonna raise our glass in a toast because we know you don't have to be a blood relative to love your relative. So, cheers, ladies.
Cheers.
Yep, this always goes over my computer. I'm
Cheers.
just waiting for the
Cheers.
day. Waiting for the day.
Mm.
Okay. Well, my message for mom really, really touches home, and I always like to think of my mom, my parents when I'm doing a message from mom. Little monologue, but in 1982, when Martha Stewart came out with her first book, Entertaining, so that was it coincided with my wedding. So I was married on August 6th, 1983. And my mom was just a gaga over Martha Stewart and just wouldn't shut the hell up about talking about Martha. So everything about my wedding, turned into Martha. So, which actually, I mean, it turned out very, very well because my mom and dad had the rehearsal dinner in their backyard, and my mom um, did everything, and it all came from Martha's book. So we had salmon mousse, which my mom was just over the moon to make, and then also, um, sorry, I have to adjust my microphone here. I'm not set up correctly, but so we had salmon mousse for the rehearsal dinner, and I can't remember I think some sort of peas come to mind. But my wedding cake was also inspired by Martha because my mom discovered that you could put flowers. That was actually kind of a novelty.
Yeah, fresh flowers.
Fresh flowers on my cake. They weren't edible, but I mean, now we even have edible flowers, but I had flowers on my cake. So whenever I think of Martha Stewart, I just think of my mom, and I think of how my wedding really came about, and she was totally influenced by Martha. So I think Martha truly was one of the first influencers.
Yeah.
And honestly, from that moment on, Martha was part of my life too. So perhaps I didn't do her recipes or make her recipes. I always thought her recipes were a little over the top, maybe not as complicated as Julia Child's, but maybe just a little bit too complicated for a mother of three boys who was used to making casseroles. So, so anyway, but we're going to talk about Martha today because, as I said, well, and I will just mention this. So this is also very cute too, because and the documentary does touch on this, and we will talk about this. But I lived on the island of Guam, and we had a Kmart there. So on Guam, you could shop at Kmart, so you could shop at a discount store, or you could shop at Prada. There was really nothing in between, and so it turned into a very cute outing because we would go to Kmart as a family, and then Mac would always say, "Oh, are you going to go visit Martha?" Because Martha had a whole section in the Kmart, and I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going to go see Martha. She saved my patoot on the island of Guam when we were, furnishing because we had a rental home.
Yeah.
We always kept our home in the States, but when we lived overseas, I was always like refurbishing or furnishing something. And anyway, Martha came to the rescue. So I was very thankful that she had partnered with Kmart. But that said, so we're gonna kick this off because of the new documentary. So this is on Netflix, and we will have that foundational piece for those of you watching over on YouTube. We link everything down below in the description box. So so our homework was to watch this documentary. And also I came along, and Kelly, you had mentioned that CNN had also produced, it was a series of documentaries.
It was a mini series.
A mini series. And so I watched that as well. But we'll open it up. And so One thing is for sure, this is and I think Martha's in her she's 82,
She's like
83,
83, I think.
Yeah.
80. That's what I
Yeah.
want to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
83. Yes. And so if my mom were still alive today, she would have turned 89. So they are the
Mm.
same.
Yeah.
Yes,
Contemporary.
contemporaries, definitely. And I think that that's why my mom loved Martha
Mhm.
so much.
Resonated with her. Yeah.
Hmm. Very much so. Very much so. And also, too, because it was the things that she was sharing, which was really hearth and home,
Mm-hmm.
we hadn't really been talking about in a very practical way
Yeah.
up until that point. And I think the documentary points that out. But anyway, I'm gonna kick it off, ladies. So, what first comes to mind when you think of Martha Stewart? I mean, I just shared a little bit of well, why she's an icon to me, but you're quite a bit younger
Mhm.
than me. So,
Mhm.
what are your first thoughts when you think of Martha Stewart? What do you think?
Well, personally, I always think of her magazine, Living.
Mhm.
But then right up alongside of that is her presence at Kmart because I grew up in a really small town, and the only shopping option was Kmart,
Uh-huh.
That's
basically,
so funny because I
until they
don't
got a Walmart.
even think we had a Kmart.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
I
Well,
mean, we
Kmart went out
might
of
have,
business.
but I
Kmart
don't.
kind of went by the wayside probably by the time you were old enough to like really
Okay.
Yeah.
like have
I
clear
think
When did
memories
so.
of
they
shopping.
go out of business? Like
Oh,
early 2000s or something? Or
Oh, well, I was living on Guam in the early 2000s, so they were, I mean,
they were
at
still a
least
thing
there,
then.
they're still a
Yeah.
thing.
I can't remember exactly when they started closing their
okay.
stores, but they certainly were not as Walmart kind of became big, Kmart kind
Mm,
of started to fall away as far as
okay.
having a presence in
Mhm.
Yeah.
most towns and cities.
Mhm. And Target too.
And Target too.
Target had really
Exactly.
come along and
They
Mhm.
kind
into
of
their
took
own.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
kind of took the place of
Yeah.
Kmart. But yeah, the Martha Stewart living section at Kmart was, and honestly, that was even too expensive for us. Like my mom would be like, "We're not buying Martha Stewart stuff. Like, we're buying Kmart brand stuff."
That was like
Um,
what's the Target brand now?
oh, Earth and Home or something
Yeah,
like that.
that's like,
Mhm.
Yeah, they have a
Magnolia
few.
or
Yeah, they have Magnolia. They have
yeah.
Project 62, which is all like the mid-century
Yeah.
modern stuff.
It's
Anyways, that's how I would imagine that Martha was probably to
it's
Kmart.
yeah.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
felt like, I mean, it was still affordable because it was in Kmart, but
Mhm.
and her aisles, I remember they were so beautifully
Mhm.
decorated. Like they were merchandised really well. It's like walking into the Magnolia section at
Yeah.
Target. Like it felt very different than the rest of Kmart.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that was something that I remember very, very clearly. But
Mhm.
I also just remember like stacks and stacks of different plaid sheets and bedding sets. Like she
Yes.
had always such
Uh-huh.
like, this country chic kind of thing going on, that
Mhm.
on the West Coast was kind of a totally different look
Mhm.
than what's going on the East Coast, which was where she was from. So
Mhm.
Mhm.
but yeah, but her magazine, I used to love her magazine, and I would clip,
Mhm.
images out of it and
Mhm.
save recipes. I'm not sure I really ever made Martha Stewart recipes.
No.
But
That was yeah.
the idea of creating a table setting or a mantle decor or something like that was always
Mhm.
very inspirational from
Mhm.
her
Mhm.
magazines.
Definitely. And that's like through the years as a young mom and wife, I always went to her for that sort of inspiration rather
Yeah.
than her recipes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always love to see her the photos. And this is before she actually started producing her magazine, but through her
Mhm.
books and she was very present. She was on a lot of guest hosts on a lot of the
Mhm.
shows.
She's
Today's
like morning
Show.
shows and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was always like, oh, well, what's how's Martha decorating? I think
Yeah.
was it Turkey Hill?
Turkey Hill, yeah,
Turkey Hill.
her
Uh-huh.
farm. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Her home in Connecticut. So,
Mhm.
but so when did you become aware of Martha Chelsea?
Well, if I have to be completely honest, I feel like my first thought about her is maybe when she got arrested.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
No, that
Yeah.
makes
She was
sense. I
in the
mean,
news.
timing
Yeah.
wise, yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
I don't. We probably did have a Kmart near me, maybe, but I don't remember it. We never shopped at Kmart. Like I feel like we shopped mainly at Target, I guess.
Mhm.
Hmm.
When if we were going to a store like that.
Right.
My mom probably shopped at Kmart maybe without me and I didn't know because like you mentioned, like the country chic, that was very much how my mom decorated. So I'm sure
Mhm.
that my mom was very much into Martha
Hmm.
Stewart, and she was always like, I remember growing up, like you mentioned, the different sheets and all of that.
Mhm.
Like we had fall sheets and we had
Uh-huh.
Christmas sheets, and like I can remember we had uh whatever the sheets that are a little bit thicker and kind of have
Flannel.
like
Flannel.
flannel. Yeah.
Mhm.
We had flannel, like I think I had like flannel nutcracker sheets at one
Yeah.
point in
Uh-huh.
time. So
Uh-huh. to stay warm.
I'm sure that my mom was like pretty into her. But again, kind of like you mentioned, my mom never, she would cook things, but not to the extent of what Martha Stewart would do.
Mhm.
But I mean, I guess that's what first comes to mind is
When she was
when
arrested.
she was
Uh-huh.
arrested.
Which the
Yeah.
documentary does touch on.
Mhm.
And I mean, we can talk about that now if you want to, because that really was. I walked away. I mean, I always really felt that it was trumped up charges. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is so BS.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it was like, and it was even like $40,000. But what I found interesting through the documentary was who the prosecutor was. So
Yeah.
then I wasn't surprised at
Mhm.
all that he had gone after a very public profile persona,
Yeah.
Yeah.
probably to further his career. And that's James Comey.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. So I was like, so that was a new revelation to me. So I was like,
Mm.
oh, and that's why I really do like documentaries like this
Yeah.
because it'll jar something or reveal something that you didn't know before.
Yeah.
Sure.
It
So
did seem like she was just like wrong place, wrong time
was
situation.
Made
it
an
was just
example out of
ridiculous.
her.
It
Yeah.
wasn't even. I mean, basically, it was like they really got her on that, she said she couldn't recall
Yeah.
or
Right.
or verbiage.
It was like verbiage. Yeah.
yes, it was a verbiage. And I'm like, come
Yeah.
on. This is just
Well,
it was ridiculous. It really was.
I mean, going back to the rise of Martha Stewart before all of that, she's a really interesting figure to watch a documentary about, but even to just think about in our popular culture, especially in terms of how technology has changed.
Hmm.
So, if we kind of look back and think about Martha Stewart in the beginning, she had such a huge cult following, millions of fans,
She
but she
did.
also had there was this other segment of women that were really pissed off with her
Yeah.
because they felt, as we can relate to in today's social media age,
Hmm.
they felt that she was presenting an unrealistic way to be a mother and a housewife and a homekeeper.
Hmm.
Um, they felt, that her ideas were too, hoity-toity and that they were unrelatable for the average American woman.
Hmm.
So there was a backlash against her, and then there was also kind of the backlash that, say, like Phyllis Schlafly got in the feminist movement in the 70s, where
Hmm.
people were like, women were like, we finally got these careers that we wanted. And now you're telling us that we need to go back to the home and like care about the dinners that we like
Right.
spend time doing these things that we've, been
Hmm.
doing this other way in
Hmm.
order to have a career and stuff. So
Right.
there was this whole other kind of like anti-feminism or feminism sort of
Right.
contingency of people that are contingent
I mean,
that were kind of backlashing against her too, which is really interesting. So for her to
yeah.
persevere through all of that and
Hmm.
maintain her brand and her outlook and her attitude
Hmm.
was pretty phenomenal, I
Yeah.
felt. And that documentary, especially the CNN documentary, really does spends a lot of time during that period of her life and her career because they interview a lot of people that worked for her and with her.
Yes.
So that was a really interesting aspect to it. I thought that was more uh, covered in the CNN documentary,
Hmm.
which makes it worth watching.
Hmm.
Um,
I enjoyed it. I actually preferred the CNN
mm,
documentary over the Netflix.
yeah,
I really thought it gave a much more in-depth look at her life in the whole, totality
in the career
of her
building part
life.
of it. Well, they did, and
Yes.
it is. We probably should say that she did not participate. Martha did not participate for the CNN documentary. However,
Right.
she did participate in
And then
interviews for the Hulu
right.
or for
The
the
Netflix.
Netflix
Yes.
version.
And then she ended up not liking the
Oh,
Netflix
yeah.
documentary
Because
that she sanctioned, which
Yeah,
is very
it
interesting.
is
So,
interesting.
I mean, so when I also think of Martha Stewart, I think badass, like
yeah.
female woman. I do think, like you mentioned, a lot of her things that she did were probably unrealistic for your average housewife. But I guess let's like pull Martha Stewart into like today's influencers,
Mhm.
Ballerina Farm, like Hannah Nealman,
Yeah.
um, influencers like that, that she is making, her bread from scratch
Hmm.
and she's making these like pies from scratch.
Mhm.
But she has like 9 million followers on TikTok. So she's obviously doing something, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
and that's, I
And
mean, by perfect example is Martha Stewart.
yeah.
Because she says this and all the clips from like her on Larry King. She was on Larry King a
Oh, a
lot.
lot. I know.
But she talks a lot about how she's like, I'm not saying that you have to be this way. I'm
Hmm.
just trying to provide beautiful inspiration for how to live your
Yes.
life in a
Exactly.
beautiful
Yeah.
way. And it doesn't have to be
Exact.
her way. But it's just
Exactly.
ideas to like
Hmm.
influence your day-to-day life to bring beauty and
Yes.
a sense of
Yeah.
home
Right.
I
to your
mean,
space, you know.
that was her job. That
Yes.
is literally what she did. She woke up in the mornings and did that.
Mhm.
Obviously, your average woman that works is not going to be able to do that. But yeah, just to provide some sort of inspiration, which I mean, like
Yes.
you said, she was the original influencer. I mean, that's exactly what you do.
Yes.
You don't share outfits that necessarily you're expecting every person to buy the exact piece. It's
Exactly.
inspiration.
Mhm.
You
Exactly.
can buy the exact piece if you want,
Yes, you
Yeah.
can.
but you also don't
That,
have
and, that,
to.
and that's what they want mostly too. But
Yeah.
But
no, you don't have.
But that's why you link similar
Exactly.
items. Like you have
Exactly.
maybe, an expensive handbag that you're like,
Mhm.
hey, you can buy this expensive handbag. This one's going to be $2,000, or there's a similar one that you can buy for 200.
That's right.
You know?
And then we can integrate that into our
Yeah.
our lifestyle. And I do appreciate that about Martha because she from the
yeah.
get-go she was actually being very honest about that. But
Well,
Mhm.
and that's
I
what she did with Kmart. Like
yeah. And I thought it was
that was her
brilliant
Kmart
because
Very
yeah,
version.
stroke,
because
yeah.
so many people were against her actually uh partnering with Kmart. They really
Mhm.
thought it was going to kill her brand. And she was like, no, she wanted to bring it to the everyday woman,
Yeah,
everyday man. And I think that was a brilliant move on
Yeah.
her part. But I
definitely.
just want to just segue off just a little bit because I always find this very interesting that women become very polarized with
Mhm.
subjects like this. Subjects like Martha Stewart, who is bringing beauty into your home, and it's like, oh, we fought so hard, to be surgeons and to be lawyers, and so you're
They're
really
putting pressure on us now to have to be this other thing
right.
too.
I always find that it's just why is that a polarizing situation with women because and we do and we divide that line and we go into one camp or the other camp, but at the end of the day when you really think about it, I mean everybody has a home,
Yeah.
everybody has to eat. I mean so you're making meals, you're furnishing your home. So I've it's always been baffling to me why this becomes a very polarizing
I think
topic,
I think it
like
I
you're
mean
saying, like with ballerina farms.
Yeah, I don't know.
it
Why is
I
that?
don't know why
exists.
it does.
I mean, I think it's existed forever,
Hmm.
but I think one of the biggest or clearest things that I see when I consider that is there's a group of women, however large that group is, that takes things in a literal way that
Hmm.
can't really separate themselves
Mhm.
from taking something in such a literal way. Like, so you have let's say Martha has, millions of fans who look to her for inspiration and they watch her show and they buy the magazine and they shop her products and da da da,
Hmm.
and they're happy with the influence that she's bringing to their life. But then there's that other group that feels like you're putting pressure on me to do all of these
Hmm.
things that I don't have time to do, and now you're making me feel bad about myself. And it's like, okay, well,
Uh-huh.
and that's that literal interpretation of seeing someone, an influencer, and being like, oh my gosh, if I'm not like that person, then I am just a loser. And that's not how it
Mhm.
should be interpreted
Mm-mm.
at all.
Yeah.
I
Especially
agree.
if we look at the word influence. I mean,
Right.
it shouldn't be so cut and dried as far as someone saying, this is what I'm wearing today. And it's not a
Yeah.
literal, like it shouldn't be taken in such a
Right.
literal way.
Right.
I
That's a
agree,
good
and
point.
I also think that I mean, we kind of touched on this in like our social media episode, but I think there is maybe a clear distinction of where taking it literally and taking it not literally should be divided. And okay, so we talked about how like 13-year-olds are on social media. They're probably going to take influencing very literally, right?
Right.
Because they see an influencer and like, oh my gosh, I have to be like that. If I'm not like that, I'm not cool. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not, you know,
Mhm.
all of these things. However, I guess where does the divide come when, an adult female woman grows up and is
Mhm.
like, hey,
Mhm.
I am my own woman.
Mhm.
I don't have to be exactly
Yeah.
like you. But like,
Mhm.
where does that
Yeah.
divide come? And like, I guess for some people, it just doesn't happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
it's very interesting, but I do think that you touched on something very real that people are taking it literally because
Mhm.
and we don't have to stay on this
Yeah.
particular topic for long, but when people come over and are talking to me on the social channels, they will come over and literally tell me you cannot wear that. You are too old
Mhm.
or I can't wear that, so therefore you can't wear that
Right.
rather
Yeah.
than encompassing that, yeah, hey,
I think
it's not for me. And just like I was just sharing earlier, I got so much inspiration from Martha, but not everything. I didn't make her recipes. I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't buy her cookbooks, but that doesn't mean I was going to throw the baby out with the bathwater,
Right. Well,
right?
I think you hit on I
It's
think
like,
you hit on exactly
yeah,
what the crux of it is, and
mhm,
it's that someone will come along, and in our experience on the blog, in your experience in particular, it's I would never wear that,
mhm.
and therefore why are you
You
wearing it?
can't wear it
So that's
either.
the I mean, you if you look at the in the documentary specifically, but even just in our memory
Mhm.
of the group of women and people that didn't like Martha, they were
I
thinking in that
know.
way, like, I cannot do those
Yeah,
things.
So why are you
So
doing it?
why are
that's
you
right.
telling me that I should?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
But I love her
And that's
response.
the literal interpretation
Yeah,
of
yeah,
influence,
yeah,
right? Martha's not telling you you should do anything. She's
exactly.
just saying, here,
That's
here's how
right.
to make a pretty cake, or
Right?
here's how to
Yeah.
make a pretty flower
Yes.
arrangement. Like it's
Or
not,
here, here's how I grow my flowers. I mean, I always loved that too.
yeah.
I mean, boy, I mean, talk about, hashtag goals. When she would be on Turkey Hill and then share her
Mhm.
gardens, I
Yeah.
was just like, oh, I would have
Oh, yeah.
loved, loved, loved
Yeah.
to have that.
Well, it's a way to like romanticize life. And I think that's what a lot of people do with even current influencers,
Hmm.
Exactly.
Hmm.
is that, okay, it looks great to live in this like farm style house, like out in the middle of nowhere. Realistically, that's probably not going to be me,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Right.
I'm not going to be the one to live out in the farm.
Definitely.
And I know that.
Hmm.
But looking at Martha Stewart's life, like this looks amazing,
Yeah. Beautiful.
right? Like this looks
Inspiring.
beautiful. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I take it is I'm like, oh, like this is nice to romanticize, but like ultimately it's maybe not me, but I can like at least somewhat decorate my house.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it doesn't even my house is definitely not decorated like Martha Stewart would decorate
Hmm.
her house,
No,
but I
but
like it.
right. Exactly. And I think that that was the point that she was always trying to make is
Mhm.
like, how to bring beauty into this
Yeah.
world.
Well, I think what
And
she did,
through your home and through your what you're wearing, because she did get into clothes a little bit later, or shoes
yeah,
Oh,
anyway.
did she?
Yeah.
she has some like puffer
Hmm.
jacket
Yeah,
type
the
things.
puffer jackets.
But one of the things I think that she coupled so beautifully with the influence is that she actually shared practical and still does share practical
Yeah.
information.
Yes.
So it's not just about
Yes.
look at how beautiful my gardens are, but they're like, she actually has a show about her gardens. I think it's on Hulu, but
Yeah.
where she's taking you through gardening, and she's like giving you
Uh-huh.
really practical information about
Yeah.
how to plant, when to plant,
Right.
soil mixtures. Like, I
Uh-huh.
mean, she's
And
giving practical
the tools to
information.
use.
Yeah.
And
Which I
yes.
think is cool because I mean, I
I
actually
know.
wish that I knew more about gardening. I
Hmm.
don't. I
Yeah.
wish I wish I did have more time to do that. But it was funny because after we watched the Netflix,
Did Andrew watch it too?
Andrew watched it with me
Yeah.
and he actually found it very interesting.
Mhm. What were his takeaways?
Uh I mean, he thought that she came across definitely as a badass, and
Uh-huh.
his takeaways were kind of the same as mine, where she definitely comes across as a badass. She's, definitely a female entrepreneur, and she did like very well with for herself.
Mhm.
But she also kind of came across as a little bit of a bitch, and
Mhm.
I think that, um, I just think that's like her personality.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I have l I am not, like, faulting her for that because
Mhm.
I think I can come across that way too. Like, she comes
I think we
across a
all do
little,
at
like,
some point or another.
cold-hearted,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and I've had people tell me that I come across that way, so, like, I'm not, like, faulting her at all for that
Uh-huh.
because I think many people, and especially women, do, and I think if that was a man instead of a woman sitting in front of that camera doing that documentary, people would be like, "Oh, yeah, like, we're praising this man," but instead they look at her and they're like, "Well, she's a bitch."
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
I actually felt like personally about I mean, her whole life story is so insane in that she came from the finance world and was on this,
that was
working in
I
crazy.
entertainment and stuff.
know.
Like,
I
so
like
she
didn't
kind
I
of
did not know
She was a
that.
model. She went to
That
Barnard.
was
yeah,
She
like
was married very young. She was
badass
like
she
'though.
was, yeah.
yeah.
I was like, that is
She was
Mhm.
the only woman
insanely
in
cool.
their floor in their office,
I know.
and in the CNN documentary, all the men that she worked with have really kind of amazing things to say about her experience there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be able to come from like you kind of grow a set of brass balls in that world, so it doesn't surprise me that
Yeah.
she would maintain that
Yeah.
level of
Yeah.
kind of stoicism and,
Mhm.
for lack of a better term, like cold heartedness when she got into her lifestyle brand. And I think the idea of someone having that kind of ruthlessness and determination does not mesh well with lifestyle brandy type, good feels kind of thing. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So
Mhm.
I think that the potential for her to rub up against people the wrong way
Right.
in her later business, it seems when you see where she came from, it seems like, okay, she's really been through like
Mhm.
some really
But
Mhm.
that's
rough
how
and
she made
tumble.
it so far.
Yeah.
You don't make it that far as
Mhm.
she made it in this
Mhm.
world to make like to do as many cookbooks, to do as many,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
like as much as she did,
Yeah.
and be a little, oh, I'm so nice. Like that's
Yeah.
just not, I'm sorry, but in this
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
as people like to say, this is a man's world. And
Mhm.
sometimes women have to
Mhm.
be
You
Mhm.
have to
like,
man up. You have to man
yeah.
up, or be,
I mean,
or
I
like
hate
we
to
say, you
say
have to be
that, but
You just
a
can't
badass
have you just
boss.
can't have a thin skin.
yeah, you
No, you
can't.
can't. You really, really
So you
can't.
have to be able to stand up for yourself,
Mhm.
be knowledgeable about what you're going into and how to
Mhm.
talk about it and stand up for yourself really and
Mhm.
Yeah.
not be reduced to tears when things don't go the
Yeah.
way that you're
Mhm.
expecting them to go.
Mhm.
So just taking a lot of emotion out of your
Yeah.
daily business life is, and when you've been doing that as long as someone like Martha has, it
Mhm.
just kind of becomes who you are, I think.
Yes, because
So,
she's been in the spotlight since her first cookbook in 1982.
Yeah.
well, even before that, as a
And
model, she was in the spotlight. And then even before that, being like one of the
right,
only women in her job on Wall Street, she was kind of
Yeah.
in
right.
the spotlight.
But
So,
but I would even say that that was just a little bit different because she was an employee,
no, sure.
not,
Yeah.
not the entrepreneur. I think when she really, switched gears and she became the entrepreneur and then, built her empire,
For
that's,
sure.
yeah,
I
that was
think
a
she's
big,
Yeah, she
funny.
was on the cover of every single one of her magazine issues, I think,
Oh,
uh-huh,
yeah.
which
she was.
was insane.
Yeah,
When you think about how, what a photo shoot, like when we do photo shoots, and
I
I think
know.
about, geez Louise, like if you had to do
I know.
something like this kind of thing every single month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how
But
she
but she did have people do her hair and makeup, and
Sure. Yeah, we don't
she
have
probably
that.
didn't even have to tie her shoes, so a
probably.
A little
which
bit
is, I mean,
different.
I would love to
I
be in that
mean,
position.
It's a little
I
I would love that.
like I mean, I thought she was hilarious on I mean, a very sarcastic sense of humor, but she would say
Yeah,
things
yeah.
and me and Andrew would just start laughing because
Mhm.
we're just like it would almost be like so like off the cusp that you're just like, "Oh, did she really just say that?"
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
think that's and I think her getting arrested obviously
Mhm,
and having to do jail time
mhm.
shocked the world.
It
Yeah.
did.
But I think
She was sent away
her
for 5 months.
yeah, and I think her
Uh-huh.
coming out of that
It
though,
had to have been hard.
um I think she obviously had to like develop a different kind of relationship with the press and the public
Mhm.
at large, right? So
Yeah.
Well,
seeing how she seems a lot more free
uh-huh.
in the post Martha interviews and the post jail interviews, like
Yes.
I feel like she kind of was basically like, all right, you guys
Well,
really, really fucked with me.
they did.
And now, now I'm back and
They
I'm not
did.
going to take it anymore.
Well, and also too, so let's just touch about on this just a little bit because her career has had some very high highs and some very low
Very,
lows. And
yeah.
they really did think that after her prison sentence that
Mhm.
she was done. I
Yeah.
mean, and that really was evident on the Netflix documentary that they really thought she was going to be down and out. But how she has been able to manage things for over 40 years in a
Mhm.
very fast-paced, ever-changing environment,
Yeah.
and she was, and she's been able to ride those waves to really, to stay current, to stay relevant, and and she's still in everybody's, I mean, radar
Yeah.
screen, definitely. So
Yeah.
let's talk about this. What do you think was her big moment after she came out of prison?
Justin Bieber.
The
Snoop Dogg
the
just
Justin, yeah, the Justin
The
Bieber
Justin Bieber
roast,
roast.
yeah.
which I did not know. I
Yeah.
had no
I didn't either
knowledge
actually
of
until
that.
I
So
watched that.
yes.
And she really leaned into it. I think
Mm-hmm.
she could have gone like one of two ways and she could have been like super offended,
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
but she really leaned into it
That's what I'm
instead.
talking about.
Did.
That post
Yeah.
prison Martha really leaned
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
that, where
Yeah.
maybe the pre prison Martha would not have, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
um,
whoever
Yeah.
was guiding her, or if it were just her own instincts.
I
or-
think some of it was her own instinct because I think
I mean,
It seemed
my
in a
hat's
way
off
that
to you.
she was kind of like, I don't know if I really want to do this. I don't really know if I want to be here, but my publicist and people are telling me, I think Alexis, her daughter, was like, Mom, you should do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Um,
probably saw what the next wave was.
because I think what was so cool about that documentary is that they have all the footage of her showing up at the red carpet for the roast, and
Mhm.
she does not look comfortable at all. Like
Mhm.
she looks kind of like hesitant and a little bit like, okay, I'm here, but I
Uh-huh.
don't know if I should be. But then as the roast is going along and you
Uh-huh.
watch that roast, she's like easing and
Uh-huh.
she's like, okay, I get this. I
Uh-huh.
totally get how this is going.
Yeah.
And then she gets up and she does her roast and it was
Mhm.
really,
It was
really
great.
good. It was
Yes.
really
Well,
funny.
I think like I mean, I've never been to prison and I hope that I never go.
Let's Chelsea, let's hope. Let's hope not.
I hope
Let's
that
hope
I
that's
never
not your future.
I hope I never go, but I would imagine that going to prison probably takes a lot of like I mean, it just kind of strips you bare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that the type of prison that she was in is much different than like most
It was
prisons.
not a maximum
It was
security
not,
facility.
yeah.
No. No.
But with that being
However,
said,
yeah,
you're
It's
still in
still jail.
prison. It
she's
still
prison.
strips you. I mean, you go from being Martha
Your
Stewart
ego is
to you're in cells with women, that
Mhm.
probably came from not a lot
Mhm.
and um like the reality sets in. So I think
Yeah.
when you leave prison, you're kind of like,
Mhm.
well,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
there's really only one way to go and
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For real. I loved one of the things I really loved about that, both of the documentaries was how they featured interviews with women that she was incarcerated with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
That
they
was
talked
nice.
about their experience with her and how they felt with her coming into their place. And somehow now there's, all these TV cameras out, at the jail gates and everything. And so now this place is kind of on the map. It was in
Yeah.
North Carolina or something. Um, but I,
Mhm.
I enjoyed those little bits of glimpses into like how she was there. And the only thing that I wish is that there's one lady in particular that talks about her and Martha, like her time with Martha in jail, and she says, "I'm still waiting for her to call."
I
Because Martha said
know.
that she would keep
Oh,
in
I
touch with them, and
know.
yeah.
I
I
just
wish she
really
would.
wish that Martha
Yeah.
would like reach out to these women because they
Mhm.
still I mean, they may have felt like she was, some celebrity coming to jail and, was going to be she might get better treatment or, this, that, or the other thing, but they realized that she was in the mix just like the rest of them were.
Mhm.
And so I think that overall it seemed from these interviews anyway, from these women that their connection with her changed and they realized who she was as an actual person
Mhm.
rather than a celebrity.
Mhm.
And I thought that was a very uh,
Mhm.
poignant piece of the
Yeah.
documentary.
No, that
Mhm.
was interesting
Mhm.
to learn about.
Mhm. And I will segue over to because we can talk about how we feel Martha is portrayed at the end of this documentary, but I
Mhm.
kind of want to back up a little bit
Yeah.
because it's her family life
Hmm.
and her family life because I do think it's very challenging to have it all. I think it's very hard, and I think Martha discovered that, and I
Hmm.
think that one, and she says that even to this day that her biggest regret was her divorce.
Hmm.
But what I liked about the documentary really brought this out is that I mean she was at this point when she's producing so much
Yeah.
and that she just didn't have enough hours in the day to
Hmm.
get everything done. And I can totally relate to that because I mean, I'm not anywhere near, her
Hmm.
scale or her sphere, but I feel that many times in my life
Yeah.
that it's really hard to carve out my personal life. But one thing I do know is how important a personal life is, and I do
Mhm.
think that Martha realized that maybe a little bit too late. When she did get divorced from her husband,
Yeah.
and that was one of her biggest regrets. But what I also really admire about Martha and her daughter, Alexa, is it Alexa or Alexis?
Alexis.
Thank you. Alexis, is that they really navigated. I think they've had kind of a challenging relationship through the years, but I really admire both of them because I
Hmm.
think they do have a good relationship. And one of the things that it was pointed out when she was in prison is Alexis came to see her every day.
Yeah.
I
Every
thought that
week.
was
Yeah.
amazing. I was like, good for you. Good for you. And I mean, because your mom so needed your support then. And so I was very happy to see that because at the end of the documentary, uh, I do think that she can, and I think that that's why Martha doesn't like the documentary. She really seems like she's kind of a bitter old person
Hmm.
and unhappy. That's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I thought though that the story that she tells about the divorce from her first husband,
Mhm.
um, and I thought one of the revealing things that was that she had kissed someone and if you can call a kiss cheating, then she cheated on her husband first before he did her. But
Uh-huh.
he ended up basically leaving her for someone that worked
Mhm.
with her and lived
I
at Turkey
know.
Hill. Like so,
I know.
that's one of those kind of
That
blows
always
that's just
happens
like
too.
it's one thing if someone cheats with someone and it's someone that you don't know, but when it's someone that
Mhm.
is a part of your organization and
Yeah.
that you
Mhm.
work so closely with, it really cuts to the bone
Mhm.
in a deeper way.
Yeah, it's
I
betrayal.
will say, like, the
Betrayal.
way that the Netflix documentary portrays that, because this is one of the things that me and Andrew were laughing about,
Uh-huh.
is how I don't know, whoever was like interviewing her was like, they were talking about how her husband had, the affair. And then they're
Mhm.
like, but you kissed someone on your
On your
honeymoon.
That
honeymoon.
doesn't count.
And then she's like, yeah. And it
She
was just
says
so
I know.
nonchalant, like over her head
No,
that,
she's like,
she's like, yeah, but he didn't know about that.
mhm.
and
Yeah,
That was
I know.
yeah, she's like, he didn't know.
I
But
know.
we laughed about that because, I mean, granted, her husband's affair versus that kiss, like, I think it's like two, very
pretty
different.
night and
Yeah.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like apples and oranges. But yeah, that just made me laugh. But I will say one thing that I think in that particular documentary or movie that made her a little bit more human or realistic was the letters that they shared that she wrote to her husband.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because
Yes.
I do think at the end she did kind of come across as a little bit bitter, and
Mhm.
people would say, "Oh, she's such a bitch." But the letters that she wrote to her ex-husband, I mean, those were some like very personal letters that
Mhm.
like, I don't even know if I would want those letters read out
Mhm.
loud.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm shocked that she allowed them to
Mhm.
Well,
have
I
those.
think she probably realized that compassionate part of her needed to be shown in a way that maybe she couldn't
Yeah.
express it
Mhm.
verbally in an interview situation. So the letters lent to that.
Yeah.
I thought one of the things that she did talk about, and this could maybe contribute to why you feel like she was a bit bitter at the end, was it was really hurtful to me to hear the story that she told about the man that she had been dating for 15 years,
Oh
who,
my
when she
gosh.
went to jail, did not visit her
Mm,
once,
Mhm.
never contacted her, never wrote her, but
yeah.
did get together with her afterwards and then told her that he was marrying someone else while they were in bed together.
Mhm.
Like that,
That
even
reminds reminds me of that.
that's a
It's just
That's
horrible,
horrible. I
no,
know when you're
that's
both together,
horrible.
but you
it's
remember
so
that
horrible.
sex?
He seemed strange from the
But
get-go. I'm
either
gonna
way,
say it.
here's the thing. They had been seeing each other for 15
No, I
years.
know.
So and you could tell like the look on her face and the tone of her voice when she's like, and this is what he told me, and then
I
that was
know.
it. And she's like, that was 15 years with someone, and
I
that's how
know.
he
I
and she was like,
know.
so that was divorce number two. Even though they weren't never married,
Right.
she still
A
felt like she had given a huge
right.
part of her life to this person,
Well,
and he just
yeah.
completely screwed her
And to
at the
be
Yeah.
end. And
betrayed.
oh
Oh,
my
by the
gosh.
way, babe, I'm getting married.
I mean, just
Can you imagine
horrible.
that? But no, it really reminded me of that Sex in the City. It was on the first season, and Miranda um liked this younger man and then didn't like him. I can't remember what his name was, but anyway, they ran into each other. And
Mhm.
so she was like, yeah, she really want Skippy. His name was Skippy.
Skipper,
Oh,
Or
yeah.
Skipper.
Skipper. Yeah.
So
And
anyway,
he was like obsessed with her.
yeah, he was obsessed with her. So but he was dating this really cool, like she was like a Vogue executive or something. I can't remember what it was. And then Miranda runs into them. But the how they broke up, Skipper with this woman that he was dating. So Miranda calls him. They're having sex. And
And he
Miranda
answers
goes
the
and he
phone.
answers the phone.
Yeah.
And then he breaks up with her. And she's like, you're breaking up with me while you're in me?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was one of the funniest
It's
scenes I ever. It's just like people are just I don't know.
yeah.
Sometimes you're just like, what the heck? And my heart actually really did go out to Martha with that one.
Yeah, I felt
I
like that
really do.
was a
Yeah.
real because
Yeah.
she's, comes out of prison and,
Yeah.
deals
Right.
with that the whole time and
Uh-huh.
then deals with the crumbling of her business and having to sell off,
Uh-huh.
bits and chunks
Yeah.
and not being, the head of anything anymore really
Mm-hmm.
and then that kind of blow it's
I
I don't
know.
blame the lady for being bitter. I'm sure I would be,
Mm-hmm.
kind of bitter about it too.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think though that, the biggest salve for that sort of betrayal is, her meteoric rise again,
I know,
afterwards.
which is
So,
yes. So that had to have been very satisfying and,
yeah, I
to
would think
her,
so.
which
Yeah.
and I think it's really great. And I think it's also very inspirational for all of us is
Mhm.
that
Mm-hmm.
we've seen this woman just navigate so many different things and navigate it in the public eye, so whether that's women not being in her camp,
Yeah.
her divorce, going to prison, and then I mean, just like last year, she was on the cover of Sports Illustrated in her, in her
Swimsuit.
swimsuit.
Yeah,
It's
I
just like,
know. It's crazy.
I'm like, you go, girl.
Yeah.
She rose and
I
rose again.
she really has. She's been very resilient, and I think that's very inspirational
Mhm.
to see a woman, and especially navigate, decade by decade, because we still are somewhat. I mean, I think we're pushing boundaries back day by day on
Mhm.
aging and what that looks like, but she has really shown that you can be relevant at any age, no matter what's going on in your life, and you can make a comeback,
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I love that. And I
For sure.
personally, I mean, even though I am of the mindset at the end of the Netflix documentary, she really did seem to be a little bit bitter and a little bit sad. But I mean, I love her. So
Yeah.
I will always love her and be thankful on many levels that she has been a, a force, really,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
a
Well,
force in
and I think
so
what's
many
been
ways.
so amazing about her kind of reinvention is that it's less than a reinvention and more of just like recognizing the different open paths that she could take. Like,
Hmm.
because I think what's still really cool is that she may have, this friendship with Snoop Dogg
Hmm.
and have a
Well,
TV show
we
with
can
him
touch on that if
and
you
yeah,
want to.
and have, different advertising campaigns and different things like that with him. But
Hmm.
she also still goes on like CBS Sunday Morning and has cooking segments. And
Hmm.
I mean, she still is doing the Martha Stewart that we all know and remember.
Yes.
She's just got all these other things that she's doing too that
Right.
keep her fresh, I
Hmm.
think. And it's a really commendable way to structure things, I think, for
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
only just her business and that side of things, but just as far as being an influencer in terms of how to grow old.
Hmm. Well, do you want to touch on Snoop Dogg a little bit? Because I do think that was a pivotal point in her career when she did start to partner
Yeah.
with Snoop because he was very relevant
Yeah,
and they became friends, it seems like, during that Justin Bieber roast because they were
yeah.
sitting next to each
If
other.
if
So,
we believe what they say in the documentary, that's exactly what happened.
That
yeah,
was an interesting. Somehow, like Snoop Dogg is friends with everyone. It's like
yeah,
he knows everyone at
hmm
the Olympics. He was everywhere.
Yeah.
he was.
See, and
um,
I think his relationship with Martha paved the way for a lot of more mainstream types of things like that. Like I
yeah,
don't know if he would be looked at as someone that could come on the Olympics and be a commentator
yeah,
by
Yeah, that's a good
NBC
point. Yeah,
if he didn't already have this
yeah.
kind of like
Well, but
right.
warm
he's.
relationship with someone like
I
Martha
mean,
Stewart.
obviously, not going into this, but I feel like even his career,
Mhm.
he is kind of like Martha in the sense that he has, built this career. And I mean, he just continues to keep it
Mhm.
going in a
Mhm.
very relevant way. And I think that's something that maybe they have in common
Yeah.
is they were able to reinvent or maybe not Snoop Dogg reinvent himself, but just keep the career going even
Mhm.
later in life by just evolving.
Hmm.
She gets out of prison and, then it's like Instagram becomes big and now it's like it's
Hmm.
TikTok and,
Hmm.
she has to learn all these things. Well, she's
Mhm.
83 years old.
I
I
know.
mean, my grandmother is like 89. She barely knows how to text.
Yeah.
I mean, I love her
I know.
dearly, but it's like,
I know.
Yeah,
it's
well,
pretty cool.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think both Snoop Dogg and Martha
Good
Stewart
point.
realized like from his perspective, he's, not he's popular in the popular culture for a certain thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Same with
For a
Martha,
certain niche,
for a
Yeah.
certain
yes.
niche, and same
Hmm.
same with Martha.
Hmm.
But then you see these two come together in the most unexpected ways, and now all of a sudden his world is open up to
Right.
her, and her world is open up to
Yeah.
him, and it's kind of this symbiosis that I feel like
Hmm.
is really like smart and beautiful, and it works
Yeah.
out really well.
Yeah.
Like the coverage that they did together, the segments that they did together in Paris, I thought were some of the cutest
They
bits of the
were.
Olympics. I
I
Hmm.
loved
agree.
it.
And
I
he
agree.
almost like made her seem more human than
Hmm.
she did before. Like just more
Laid back.
relatable, laid
Yeah.
back. People could relate to her
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, let's talk about then your opinion of Martha. So, did it change at all after watching the either documentary? Till you've watched both documentaries. I have too.
Yeah.
Chelsea, did you?
I just watched the Netflix one.
Just the Netflix one.
Um,
I think actually, really thought the CNN one portrayed her in a better light.
well, she also wasn't in
Honestly,
the CNN one.
I know.
She
Yeah.
wasn't
Maybe
talking
that's
in the CNN
And she
one.
wasn't adding
no.
anything other than what they had
Yeah.
from other people and then
Uh-huh.
on file. But personally, um, I think I think the little bits and pieces about her life that I didn't know were very interesting to learn. And I feel like I have way more of an interest in her story than I did before, thanks to the documentaries.
Mhm.
But I personally don't feel like she was bitchy or bitter at the end of the Netflix documentary. In fact, I walked away from that documentary wanting to like write her a letter and explain to her like how important her story feels to
Mhm.
someone like me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, for a lot of reasons, but one of them being just being able to give a middle finger to everyone who tries to cut you down and just be like,
Mhm.
I am who I am and I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
y'all can suck it.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know. I feel like her just attitude and how she dealt with things throughout the course of her life and how she dealt with the things that kind of happened to her. So like her reactions to things and especially the whole trial portion of
Oh
things.
yeah.
Like I felt like she was just
Yeah.
top notch and handled things really amazingly. And I think it's a good lesson. And I felt like I wanted to like write her a letter and say
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That's sweet.
Yeah, I don't
so
think my I mean, I guess I didn't really have too much an opinion on her before watching this. Just cuz she was a little bit before my time, I guess. But I mean,
Mhm.
obviously I knew who Martha Stewart was. Like,
mhm,
everyone knows who Martha Stewart
Right.
is.
She's
Um,
so iconic. She
but
is.
for real.
I feel like I mean, kind of like you, like, I mean, okay, maybe she did come across as a little bit bitter to me at the end, or,
Mhm.
I could see how people could portray her as a bitch, but again, people have said the same things I feel like to me, like that I come across a little cold, or so I don't really uh take like count that against her. I think she did what she did well,
Mhm.
and I think she showed women that they could also do the same thing.
Mhm.
um and I mean, she made a lot of money for it. Like,
Mhm.
so whether you want to
Mhm.
like love her or hate her, I mean, she did it very well. So you can sit there and critique her all you want,
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
she did it well.
Yeah.
She did. And
Martha.
honestly, and I think I've already touched on this a little bit, my opinion of Martha has not changed at all. I think just for me, watching her, I was just like, I don't know, I just have this empathetic heart. And so I
Mhm.
would not want her to be sad or bitter or lonely.
Right.
I just, I mean, I just think that she is a badass and she's been such an
Yeah.
influence and been such a force of nature out there. So that was just me like looking at her as a person and
Right.
just being like, oh gosh, I don't want you to be that because
Yeah.
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 life is so much more than that.
Yeah.
And also too, it just, I did like how they in the documentary they went back into her childhood because your childhood really does play a big role in who you are,
Mhm.
and I do think growing up in the circumstances that she did, and her dad was such a perfectionist, and I think she's definitely a perfectionist too, and I think that that's also when you can get very maybe isolated
Mm.
somewhat.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, but then there again, we look at her relationship with Snoop Dogg, we look at her relationship with her daughter. So I think that
Yeah.
there's definitely
Yeah.
signs there. I mean, I'm sure she has many wonderful friends out there,
Surely.
but yeah, but at the end of the documentary, that was just me.
Yeah.
She seemed lonely, and it really was heartbreaking. I don't think she ever really got over her divorce with her husband, and that's a little heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that was yeah. So.
Especially at all the life that she's lived
Hmm.
in
Mhm.
between.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I guess he won't even talk to her.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh, and, which is it's interesting because was there a restraining order? Did he have to put a
he
restraining
did.
order?
Yeah,
That's what I
because
thought.
I think that had something to do with the letters too. I think she
Mhm,
just I
doing
don't
and
think
stuff.
she was mean or violent or did anything
No,
that she
I
shouldn't
think
have done.
so.
I think she just wanted him
Mhm.
back and
Mhm.
was trying to make a case for it.
Yeah, because there's another famous couple that have certain parallels, and that's James Taylor and Carly Simon.
Oh, yeah.
Because she he put a restraining order on her too. She just like loved him like so much. She just didn't, she didn't want
Couldn't
to,
let
I
it
guess
go.
she couldn't let go or something. And she would still like to talk to him, or repair their,
Yeah.
I mean, not to ever get back together, but he won't have anything to do with her. I
Mhm.
thought that was kind of
Yeah.
interesting for, both parallels,
Yeah.
but that's just me. So what do you think is your biggest takeaway from the documentary?
Um, I think, I mean, basically what I just said in terms of how I felt at the
Mhm.
end of it and her impact on me and how I think about, going forward in life and things. And,
Mhm.
um, but I feel like, that ability to reinvent herself in such a, or to
Mhm.
be open to taking new paths in such a
Mhm.
brilliant way is
Mhm.
really worth hanging on to that lesson.
Mhm.
So,
I did. I love that,
mhm.
and the both documentaries really
Yeah,
Mhm.
bring that home.
yeah.
So Chelsea, what's your biggest takeaway from the documentary?
I mean, yeah, kind of the same. I feel like too, she created a career out of something that she loved to do. I mean,
Yeah.
even like the gardening aspect and, the homemaking. And I think that's a really cool and
Hmm.
unique perspective to take because I think even most people today, even as they get older, they're like, well, what am I going to do? Like, do I like
Hmm.
my job? Do I want to do this?
Yeah.
And the fact that she was like, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it well, is really cool to me because
Hmm.
I think that that's something that we should admire in people.
Hmm.
And, she was like, I'm not going to be in a career that I don't like to do,
Hmm.
Yeah,
you know?
Hmm.
yeah,
I love
I
that.
think she
yeah.
was, like,
And
willing to fail at it, and, I mean, obviously she didn't, but
absolutely.
she was willing to fail, and I think that anything that you decide to do like that, you have to be willing to fail because I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah,
9 times out of 10, you probably will.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
And yeah, she was not afraid to take risks. She wasn't
Mhm.
afraid to be, to create her own path and to have a clear vision and all that. But I just really think my biggest takeaway, and I think I've been thinking this for years since she burst onto my life
Mhm.
way back in 1982, 1983, when my mom was obsessed with her, and my wedding reflected many of her skills. But I mean, Martha, you're just badass, and I just thank you, for being
Mhm.
out there and for bringing beauty into this world, and for showing people that hard work does pay off,
Mhm.
and that you can continue to reinvent yourself decade after decade. So I just say thank you, and yeah, just keep on keeping on. And I hope you're not sad or bitter or lonely, because
We don't want that for
we
you.
don't want that for you. We don't. Okay. Well, I think that wraps up this segment, and we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with new and noteworthy. And we're back with new and noteworthy, where we are typical females and we just love to share information, tidbits. It could be a product, it could be a book, TV show. I mean, we just kind of run the gamut here. So, Chelsea, I'll kick it off with you this week. So, what do you have on deck?
So, mine is something that I've newly discovered,
Mm.
as well, I don't know if some of you guys know by now, but I'm pregnant, so,
Mhm.
um, and I have been
I'm going to be a
having
BB.
she's gonna be a baby, but I've been
Who
having the
cares about
hardest
the mom?
yeah.
I get to be a BB.
I've been having the hardest time finding like something that I can put on my skin because there's just so many rules. It's like my typical skincare, I can't use the salicylic acid that I use. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
natural one. The one that I use is actually a natural one, but there's too much like acids in it that you're not allowed to use that. And that's your typical toner, right? That you use
Right.
that gets rid of your dead skin.
Hmm.
And so for the first like 2 months, my skin, I developed like this almost like dermatitis where it was like teeny tiny little bumps all over my skin.
Hmm.
And no matter how much moisturizer or whatever I did, it just was not working. So then I went into a deep dive on
Mhm.
TikTok
Hmm.
and
TikTok,
I found,
where we find all of our
yeah,
best
where we find all of
information.
our stuff. And I found where these women were like, "Oh, use beef tallow." And I was like, "What is beef tallow?"
Mhm.
And so I looked it up. I'm actually like kind of afraid to like I feel like I kind of need to gatekeep the beef tallow that I found, like the specific one. I mean, I'll tell you, but I'm like, do I want to like, give the link to Kelly? I don't know. You
I,
can
I I mean, we use it to cook with, so I don't know. I don't know that I'd put it
well,
on my skin, but I will certainly fry an egg in it.
well, no, there's so this isn't the one that I've been putting on my skin. It's kind of like shea butter.
Mm.
Like that's the texture that it's like a really thick moisturizer.
Mhm.
But the one that I've been using is through this company called Holy Cow.
Mhm.
And it's basically beef tallow, like organic olive oil, organic beeswax, and organic like raw honey
Mhm.
that's then mixed up into like this, shea butter texture.
Okay.
But I've been using it for like 3 weeks now. And when I tell you that my skin has completely changed, I even got Andrew on it. He woke up
Wow.
the other day with like a little red rash.
Uh-huh.
He used it, it was gone the next day.
Wow.
Wow. So
So
beef
Amazing.
tallow.
I cannot tell you. And I've been putting it on my stomach. Not that
Mhm.
I don't have like a big stomach now, but it is at nighttime, it kind of like starts to, after I eat a bunch, get a little bit bigger.
Mhm.
And my holistic doctor was like, oh, yeah, you can rub that on your stomach. And all I've been doing is rose hemp oil in the morning
Mhm.
and beef tallow at night. That is it.
Mhm.
And my skin has never looked better than before I was using my really expensive
Wow.
products.
You're
So,
That's
you're
great.
also pregnant though. A lot of us aren't
Yeah.
going to have that going for us.
Yeah.
It's as far as
well,
You're glowing.
as
well,
far
no, but
as
You're
I have
glowing.
like really,
skincare.
typically my skin breaks out very easily. So
So beef
anyways,
tallow.
Anyway, that's
Okay.
a good rec.
recommend.
All right. Well, we'll have the link
Don't
down.
sell them out
We'll have the link down below.
because I need them.
And you do.
So
We'll
that's why
stock
I'm
up
like,
before we share. Okay, Kelly, what do you have for us?
I am sharing a book today. It's called The Lives of Lee Miller, and it's a book written by her own son. His name is Anthony Penrose. And so I wanted to talk about this book today because Lee Miller is a real trailblazer, much like Martha Stewart.
Mhm.
She did lead an amazing life. She started off in the mid 20s as a model,
Mhm.
and she worked for Vogue. She was discovered by Condé Nast himself.
Mhm.
So she led an exciting life there. And then she moved to Paris and became a surrealist photographer with Man Ray. And so she left modeling and got really into photography. And that whole world of the surrealists and being in that art world led her to develop new techniques for developing film
Uh-huh.
with Man Ray, which is really interesting.
Mhm.
Um, but the final chapter of her life, she took that photography, her love for photography, and she became a wartime correspondent for Vogue. So
Mhm.
she would take photos on the front line during World War II, and those photos would be published in Vogue
Mhm.
magazine, among other things. And so she led a crazy life, was married, a few at least different times, and had a kid. And she just has this really amazing story. And the book is a really,
Mhm.
really well told document of her life, which I'm really interested in the world at that time during the jazz age and all of that surrealism art and stuff. So it was very interesting.
Mhm.
It's been made into a movie. Actually, Kate Winslet is a producer on the movie.
Mhm.
It is on, I believe it's on Amazon,
Mhm.
and the movie stars Alexander Skarsgård, Andy Samberg, and Marion Cotillard,
Wow.
and it stars Kate Winslet as Lee. It's
Wow.
called Lee, and it focuses specifically on the wartime correspondent
Mhm.
part of her life.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
I have to check both out. Both sound very fascinating
yeah,
to
very
me.
good, very very
Very,
good.
very fascinating. So, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I also have a book, and since we're actually when we were talking about Martha, another really big influence in my life was Ina Garten.
Mm.
And she just recently came out with a memoir,
Yeah.
"Be Ready When Luck Arrives." Rumor has it that Martha wasn't so friendly to Ina.
Mm.
I've heard that. I don't know if that's verifiable. It's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to
Rivalry.
every time I think of Ina Garten, there's this comedian and she does like little Ina Garten bits with Jeffrey. She's
oh,
like,
does she?
Jeffrey, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
So cute.
Jeffrey. Well, this is a woman that I loved her cooking show. I have all of her cookbooks. My mom would get one. I mean, I think she produced one like every year for
Mhm.
4 years. My mom would always get it for me for Christmas. And I actually used all the recipes, and
Yeah.
they were always a hit.
Yeah.
And so she was definitely my go-to
Hmm.
guru when it came to cooking and easy recipes, but really good. And that woman loves a cocktail, so I'm like, yay,
Well, we
yay,
just
yay for you,
for those
Ina.
of you that follow us on the blog, for Fridays with Oscar, we just did Ina Garten's
Uh-huh.
espresso
We
martinis.
did. It
Mhm.
was really good.
So you can look for that recipe.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
right
great.
over on sale at a certain age. But anyway, I finding her memoir very fascinating because there again, here's a woman very oriented, but had a little, few segues, kind of zigged and zagged with her career
Hmm.
and had some challenges along the way too, but persevered,
Yeah.
and it's a great book, and I
Didn't she
highly
work
recommend it.
for the government in
Hmm.
Washington before
She did
she
in the
got
Jimmy
the
Carter
barefoot Contessa?
administration.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Interesting change of
Yes.
plans there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, and then yeah,
Really
then she
cool.
falls into the Barefoot Contessa, which was actually a store in the Hamptons,
Hmm.
and then, yes, and her purchasing that and her thinking, "What the heck did she do?"
Yeah.
And, yeah, she had some ups and downs with that, really before she developed her cooking show and then her legendary cookbooks, but I love her. She's been a great influence in my life. And as I said, I mean, I didn't make Martha's recipes, but I've made every single one of Ina's.
Hmm.
So easy and always amazing. I
Yeah.
can't think of one that I didn't like.
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
anyway. All right, ladies. Well, I think that wraps it up for another episode of Message from Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers in law don't get along with their daughters in law.